The 4th of August is the deadline for public comment on the proposed tobacco bill. It sets rules for smoking controls on how tobacco products and e-cigarettes are sold and advertised. It will also regulate packaging and appearance to make all brands look the same. But the Stop Scafe Capture campaign says this will only benefit illicit cigarette kingpins. We're now joined by Yusuf Abramjee from Tax Justice South Africa. Salaam alaikum, Yusuf, and thank you so much for joining us. Just in terms of this particular campaign, if you can break it down, because I know there are activists and lobby groups like yourself who would want to have smoking scrapped altogether. But this is where we find ourselves because of the economy and what the tobacco industry brings as well.
Hello, Sandy. Well, we've been very vocal, as you know, over many years about the implications of the illicit trade. We know that these criminals are making millions and millions of rands every week. In fact, about 100 billion rand is lost because of the illicit trade in South Africa. And we have made repeated calls on the government to clamp down on the illicit trade. We are of the view that this bill, if it becomes law, will make the organized criminal syndicates involved in the illicit trade even richer, because it's going to ban branding on packets of cigarettes, and you can imagine what a field day these criminal syndicates will have. And also, we know other sectors of society, the informal sector, the retailers, have all complained about the implications of the bill. It will make them criminals, and really, I think there'll be far-reaching implications. In fact, we at Tax Justice South Africa will be making representation to the committee to raise our objection and to say that we cannot allow to have this bill become law in South Africa.
But Yusuf, what would be the wisdom of the committee and the rationale for them to then uniform, or rather have a standard look and feel of the cigarettes and e-cigarette products?
Well, we know that probably if you ban something, Cindy, it doesn't work. We know what happened during the COVID-19 lockdown. There was a total ban on cigarettes for about 3 or 4 months. The Western Cape High Court made that particular ban. And then the Supreme Court of Appeal said that that particular ban was unconstitutional. Even if, for example, you take the flavors away, you don't have branding, how is it going to make it easier for people not to smoke? And that is why Tax Justice South Africa, we made it very clear that we do not dispute the need for South Africa to cut its smoking rates to save lives and to reduce the public health budget. However, we believe that there needs to be genuine changes, and also evidence suggests that this bill will not achieve the stated objective and may well even do the opposite while impoverishing the fiscus and enriching the organized crime syndicates, Cindy. And again, you know, display bans, plain packaging, flavor bans simply play into the hands of the criminals involved in the illicit trade, who flout the laws in the blind pursuit of profit. And we know during the Al Jazeera gold mafia expose just recently how money laundering is happening on a grand scale. Those involved in the illicit tobacco trade are involved in lawlessness, and it simply continues. And these criminals will be smiling all the way to the bank if this bill becomes law, aside from the fact that we believe that a lot of aspects of this bill will not hold the constitutional test. And we believe that even if it does become law, the Constitutional Court will probably rule against it.
All right, and which other interested or vested stakeholders are participating in the objection that you have towards this bill as it stands, albeit that time is running out? It's only until the 4th of August where submissions can be made, Yusuf.
Well, we know that a number of industries are opposed to it, not only the tobacco industry, the informal sector, for example. They're very concerned about the proposed ban on the sale of single cigarettes, which they believe is going to make them all criminals. We know that the farmers, the tobacco farmers, are up in arms because of the implications of the bill. The retailers are all angry. And I think generally society, even smokers, are all up in arms. And that is why I think it's important for South Africans to raise their voices, to raise their objections, and let's take a stand against this particular bill. We firmly believe at Tax Justice that government has not gone through the processes. They haven't thought through the implications. They haven't looked at international models where many of these proposals have hopelessly failed, and there are going to be serious implications if it becomes law.
And especially as you're saying, because this is hemorrhaging what could be revenue for the economy of South Africa, and yet we're sitting with a potential loophole that could create an environment where illicit trade is perpetuated. So how then do you even police illicit trade? We know that that in itself is an area of concern, Yusuf.
Cindy, the smuggling is happening on a grand scale. We know that almost every week the police or SARS confiscate a truck coming in from Zimbabwe and neighboring countries. We know, go to your corner shop, go to your corner Spaza Cafe, go to your corner retailer, you'll find a packet of cigarettes, certain brands being sold for anything from 5 Rand to 12 Rand, yet the minimum collectible tax is about 23 Rand some odd. So this has happened openly. They cannot police it. So if they cannot even police simple stuff like fighting the illicit trade, how are they going to police the sale of, for example, single cigarettes? And again, this illicit cigarette trade, those involved, they're really doing it on a grand scale, and many of them are getting away with it. We know that even some of these products are recorded, is manufactured in South Africa, and yet these people are continuing with the lawlessness, and they are just becoming richer by the hour.
And how will this add to concerns, especially if you were talking about the informal sector in townships in particular, spaza shops, or what has been typically called Abo my friend, you know, Pakistanis, Somalis, and those kind of traders who are not necessarily compliant. We're told that there are certain products that have not even been approved for human consumption. Is there any progress in that regard?
Indeed, we know many of these products have health hazards, there are serious health implications, and yet the police or SARS cannot even control it. You can just go 2-3 kilometers from SARS headquarters in Pretoria, and I will show you, and I challenged them before, I'll take them to show them how these illegal cigarettes are being openly sold. The corner cafe, the spaza guy involved, they're trying to make an honest living, and yet they are buying these things from the wholesalers, from the manufacturers, and they're not paying their taxes. Government is losing, Cindy, we estimate conservatively about 100 billion Rand every year. Can you imagine how many hospitals we could have funded, what we could have done for service delivery with that kind of money? And yet government keeps on crying they have no money, and yet they're allowing these people involved in the illicit trade, not only in cigarettes, in alcohol, in counterfeit goods, in other products, to become richer.
All right, just for this petition, if people, South Africans, want to get involved, those that are concerned about illicit trade and how they can add their voice to this particular campaign, Yusuf, can they join your movement, Tax Justice South Africa? Is there a platform, a portal, a link that they can follow?
The safest is to go to the Parliament SA website. There should be a link, and there's an opportunity there. They'll have details of the bill. And I would appeal to all those people who are opposed to the bill to make representation to the committee, and the committee, before the deadline, I'm sure will look at these representations and even have public hearings. And that is why we're calling on government again to scrap the bill, to go back to the drawing board, to do their homework. Clearly, the Department of Health and those that are involved have not done their homework.
Much appreciated indeed for your time, Yusuf Abramjee from Tax Justice South Africa, joining us and also making a clarion call to the public members of society who are concerned. You can go to parliament.gov.za and find that bill. You have until the 4th of August to make your submissions on the tobacco bill as it stands, that Parliament wants to essentially standardize the look and feel of cigarettes, which could potentially lead to illicit trade and falsification of the original product. Now,